Devil Venerable also wants to know. Chapter 37, 30 years later. Within this time period, nothing much happened in The God of Destruction, Volume 1. He Wenzhou and Lu Xinyi's wedding was passed over in a few lines. Afterwards, He Wenzhou made progress in cultivation with the help of his master within him, working on revitalizing his sect and continuing to investigate his village's massacre. On occasion, he would miss Bailey Qingmiao but never mentioned Lu Xinyi. His new wife seemed to have become invisible. The female character that all the readers of Abusive Love Affair hated so much had been reduced to a shadow. This was how it usually happened in accordance to The God of Destruction. He Wenzhou would get involved with many girls over the course of the story, having short flings with some, all of whom would never get mentioned again. Only Bailey Qingmiao and the Master of Xiling Pavilion were the female characters who would consistently show up in Volume 1. The Master of the Xiling Pavilion was the good wife who helped He Wenzhou manage his harem and was perfect in the reader's eyes. Bailey Qingmiao was a plot device. Whenever He Wenzhou needed to go somewhere else or fight a new enemy, Bailey Qingmiao would be stolen by a new man. He Wenzhou would search for her, kill the man and level up. Then Bailey Qingmiao would be stolen again and He Wenzhou would go after her again, killing his way from Zonglijian to Wenrenhe. Yin Hanjiang had never been mentioned though, and it was unclear why there was no sign of him in The God of Destruction. The plot of Abusive Love Affair was much more exciting compared to The God of Destruction. Bailey Qingmiao had left Shangqing sect in deep anguish and met Zonglijian in the Hellfire Pavilion, who he had seen through Wenrenhe's plan. Wenrenhe and Yin Hanjiang had shown themselves, with even the ghost mask's identity being revealed several 100,000 words in advance. The comment section was on fire, seemingly longer than the chapters themselves, enough to make Wenrenhe's eyes blur. Extra. Extra. Abusive Love Affair, Revised Edition, has made the charts again. Never thought that this trashy work would make a comeback in my lifetime. Cheers to the author. It was worth following the revision since the beginning. Not surprising, the author has written so many plot twists I can't keep up. I can't guess at all what she's going to write next. All the melodrama in the original has become perfectly reasonable and logical. Some people have even put up side-by-side comparisons in the discussion pages. It's really impressive that the author has managed to change the story so much without contradicting the old characters. As a new reader who's only seen the revision, how come someone as lovable as Xu Yanyan had no fans before? Because Xu Yanyan originally only showed up once and slept with an unconscious He Wenzhou in front of Bailey Qingmiao, making him a cripple. She was awful to the protagonist and brought her a lot of suffering. Forget the old Xu Yanyan. Now we have our sister Yanyan who'll lovingly wipe the tears off your face while calling you silly girl. Oh, that was incredible. Everyone stands Xu Yanyan? I stand King Xue. I fell in love with her back when she set up He Wenzhou and Lu Xinyi. What a unique woman. Oh come on, why are you all discussing girls? Isn't Zonglijian smart? Isn't Wenrenhe badass? My god. His badassery has increased in the revision. I've never seen the number 2 love interest pair the MC with the number 3 to get her away from the ML. That man has some unique ideas. Let me summarize the previous post. Why does Wenrenhe want his girl to get stolen? I get the feeling that this time around Wenrenhe is treating the MC as a daughter, and now he wants to pick a good husband for his silly girl. Zonglijian didn't steal his girl. He sees her as a sister. No, actually, as a little brother. I feel like the next moment, Zonglijian will find another girl to introduce the MC to. Bailey Qingmiao laughing boldly was hilarious. I never imagined Bailey Qingmiao could be described as bold. Wenrenhe was a genius for coming up with the heart-linking parasites. Looking forward to future developments. I'm eager to see what kind of high literature the author can revise this novel into. Seeing that most of the reviews were positive, with only a few fans of the original story trashing the author, Wenrenhe nodded to himself, feeling an inexplicable sense of accomplishment. Closing the book, he rubbed his missing arm and took out several manuals from his sleeves. He had stolen them while unifying the demonic sects some years back. Along with techniques from sects that he had eliminated, he even had the methods of the 2 protectors and 4 hall masters. He knew that what he'd gotten from his subordinates wasn't complete. Some crucial points could have been hidden or revised. But Wenren he didn't mind. He didn't intend to actually practice them. He just collected them for intimidation purposes. He looked through one jade slip scroll after another, studying them carefully for a whole month. There were hardly any references to blood cultivation to be found. 10,000 years was a long time even in the cultivation world, and most records of the blood arts had already been lost. Wenren he had learned the blood-severing technique when he obtained the chiming blade. Chiming was a demonic sword born in the sea of blood in the underworld. It was even older than the blood demon elder, so the blood-severing technique that Wenren he had used didn't originate from the blood demon elder. However, there was a line written in the surviving records of the war against the blood demon 10,000 years ago. The leader of the righteous sects at the time, the Sword Immortal, had said that if a blood cultivator wanted to walk the righteous path, then they must rise from their own ashes. The blood demon elder had shown himself to not have such a resolution, and was thus slain by the cultivation world. Rise from one's own ashes. Wenren he wasn't incapable of such resolve. He just needed to make some prior arrangements. If he wasn't able to succeed, he had to make sure someone he left behind wouldn't be lost without him. Wenren he had wished to be alone in life and death, to have no connections to anyone. Yet, he looked into the distance, towards the direction where Yin Hanjiang dedicated himself to cultivation in the hope of becoming stronger to serve his lord. Wenren he also settled down and focused on investigating the state of his body, trying to find a way to absorb natural spiritual energy. At the very least, he wanted to restore his arm. Cultivators were untouched by time. A year passed in the blink of an eye. Xu Yanyan completed her seclusion on the burning sky drum. She giddily took her subordinates who had been sent to the main hall back to her palace, where she had a satisfying session of cultivation. She had increased her power in this past year, and her subordinates received greater benefits in return. Their loyalty to Xu Yanyan grew and they served her more faithfully. There was just one point of concern. The right protector had her subordinates buy many books and ordered them all to read them, hoping to raise a cultured gentleman to satisfy some craving of hers. After 3 months though, she gave up. It was easy to raise snobs but hard to find real gentlemen. She wasn't one to force people to do things, and she still liked how her subordinates were honest with their intentions and wishes. The gentleman whom Xu Yanyan had been hung up on for all of 3 months before forgetting about had accompanied Bailey Qingmiao to Shangqing sect, after leaving the Hellfire Pavilion. Since He Wenzhao was currently traveling, Bailey Qingmiao greeted several of her elders, then called over Lu Xinyi to give the 7-color jade lotus heart to her. Where did you get such a mystical item? Asked her Shifu, Elder Qing Rong. With the help of immortal King Xue, I obtained it at the Golden Coast Cliffs, Bailey Qingmiao said. I wish to give it to Lushija to aid in her recovery. In front of the rest of the elders, Elder Qingrong couldn't scold her disciple, but she was frantic. If Bailey Qingmiao had gained such an amazing treasure, why wasn't she using it to raise her own cultivation stage and was instead giving it to Lu Xinyi? Her disciple had only one fault, which was that she didn't use her brains enough. After becoming the nominal disciple of immortal King Xue, this habit had only gotten worse. Silly child, is all you're thinking about is your Lushija, said Elder Qingrong, blinking desperately at Bailey Qingmiao. Don't you ever consider yourself? Look at your eyes. You've had your left eye covered all this time. Has it been injured? You ought to have the medicinal hall elder take a look at it. The 7-colored lotus heart might be able to cure it. Bailey Qingmiao's remaining eye shone clear and bright as she held the lotus heart in both hands. Don't worry, Shifu, she said. This disciple also has selfish desires. She turned to Lu Xinyi. Thinking back to the words Zhongli Jian had helped her rehearse, she spoke resolutely, "Lu Shijia, we've always disagreed with each other. Everyone at Shangqing sect knows this, and I don't wish to hide my thoughts from you. I don't like you, and I'm not giving this seven-colored lotus heart to you for your sake, but in order to let go of the delusions in my heart." Hearing the word delusion, Elder Qing Rong sighed deeply. He Wenzhou had good aptitudes and was a beloved disciple of Shangqing sect, so even if he had some improper relations with women, the sect elders could look the other way. As long as he didn't cause major trouble or deviate, they would leave him be. But when it came to Bailey Qingmiao, who had been infatuated with him for many years, he Wenzhou really hadn't treated her right. For each day that Lu Xinyi went unhealed, Bailey Qingmiao's mind would be stuck on He Wenzhou for one more day, thinking dark thoughts like "I wish Lu Shijia would die already." Her cultivation would eventually be affected. In this way, her choice could be considered as opening a new path for herself. It wasn't out of thoughtless altruism. Of course Lu Xinyi wanted the elixir. She was tired of the way He Wenzhou looked at her. She had sacrificed her spiritual root for him, but after their marriage, every time He Wenzhou looked at her, he would only sigh. He was a kind person and obviously wouldn't say anything like "You're the reason I can't have Bailey Qingmiao." But Lu Xinyi kept thinking, if she was stronger, would Shikshan like her more? She reached out a hand for it, but Bailey Qingmiao stepped away. Bailey Qingmiao. Anxiety rose in Lu Xinyi's heart as she glared at Bailey Qingmiao. "I'm happy to give you the seven-colored lotus heart, and I don't need anything in return," said Bailey Qingmiao. "But I didn't get this alone. I only managed to do it because of Master Qingxiu's help, so Lu Shijia ought to thank Master Qingxiu first." She handed the seven-colored lotus heart to Qiu Kongxiu. "Huh," said Qiu Kongxiu, who had been dozing off this whole time. With some effort, she lifted her eyelids and stuck an intact hand out of her robe to accept it. She was currently missing most of her body, and had to focus on maintaining the flesh on her face, so even making that motion wasn't easy. "Immortal Qingxiu," said Lu Xinyi as she gazed at Qiu Kongxiu. She could be angry to Bailey Qingmiao, but she had no will to defy a wandering immortal. The seven-colored lotus heart was an elixir for restoring spiritual roots and spiritual power, and didn't have much use for restoring flesh, so Qiu Kongxiu wasn't particularly interested. She was a demonic cultivator though, and wouldn't give something valuable to someone else even if she had no use for it. She tossed the glowing treasure in her hand a few times. Lu Xinyi's gaze followed it up and down, frightened that she would drop it and dirty it on the floor. "Why do you want to give something this good to her?" With effort, Qiu Kongxiu recalled the events at the Golden Coast Cliffs. "While getting this thing, I crawled in the ocean with no spiritual energy for hours," she said unhappily. After her lord dropped her into the ocean, she had to swim back to the cliffs. Bitterly, Lu Xinyi got to her knees. "Immortal Qingxiu, the seven-colored lotus heart is useless to you. Will you please let this disciple have it? I swear I'll return the favor to you in the future." "In the future?" Qiu Kongxiu furrowed her brows, a scornful look on her face. "What good is that? What if I ascend in the future? What if you die in the future?" Lu Xinyi. Lu Xinyi's Shifu, Elder King Ai, quickly stepped in for her. "Isn't this because Xinyi currently has no spiritual root and is as good as an ordinary person? Even if she swore to do something for you, she couldn't at the moment. That's why she has to promise to repay you in the future." "I don't believe in the future," Qiu Kongxiu said flatly. "I'll take payment now. Make a spirit vow that you'll pay me back with a treasure of twice the value. If you can't, your spirit and nascent soul will be mine." Lu Xinyi. "Immortal Qingxiu, this demand of yours is too heavy," said Elder King Ai. "It's hard to find another treasure like the seven-colored lotus heart, let alone one twice the value. If you make her take this vow, won't you really be taking her spirit and nascent soul in the future?" Of course. It can have some use in refining elixirs or magic items, Qing said, unconcerned. Or I can eat it myself, or send word out to anyone interested in buying it. I'm sure I can find someone willing to pay good money for it. Lu Xinyi gritted her teeth and made the vow on her knees. Qing roughly extracted a wisp of her soul, then finally gave the lotus heart to her. The whole time, Lu Xinyi glared at Bailey Qingmiao. Bailey Qingmiao only thought back to Zhongli Qian's words. Miss Bailey, I want you to turn the final decision over to Elder Qingxiu. Not to make things difficult for Lu Xinyi but to test He Wenzhou. If Lu Xinyi can't pay her debt, will He Wenzhou help her? He owes his life to Lu Xinyi, so it's the proper thing for him to do. If he's willing to watch his wife lose her soul to a pact without lifting a hand to help her, then you'll know you were mistaken about him. Therefore, Bailey Qingmiao didn't immediately leave Shangqing sect and stuck around for a few days to wait for He Wenzhou to return. When He Wenzhou heard that his little Shimei was back, he ignored his wife and ran to Bailey Qingmiao. Bailey Qingmiao looked at He Wenzhou with one eye as the other was covered with a band of the same black material as Qingxiu's robes. He Wenzhou stopped short. Taking a deep breath, he said, Shimei, your eye, were you injured? It's nothing, Bailey Qingmiao said. She put a hand on her heart and found it calm. Silently, she exchanged a thankful gaze with Zhongli Qian before continuing, Shikshan, don't you want to see Lushija? She's in seclusion right now and her spiritual root will be restored in a few more days. Shimei. He Wenzhou grasped Bailey Qingmiao's hand. With a soulful look, he said, you know whom it is that I truly love. But aside from love, duty and debt are also important. Bailey Qingmiao pulled her hand away firmly. Shikshan, she said coolly, if you're someone who values his responsibilities, then while you're in no position to marry me, please keep your own wishes hidden. Don't betray the two women in your life. If you can't even manage this, then how can you handle the leadership of the Shangqing sect in the future? How can someone who can't deal with his own problems make the world a better place? She turned away decisively, reporting to the administration hall master that she wished to travel the world for a few decades and would return after she made peace with her emotions. Elder Qingrong tearfully accepted. At the foot of the mountain, Zhongli Qian held a walking cane, waiting for her with a faint smile. The single-eyed pair greeted each other with a smile, about to head off together, but Elder Qingxiu came after them. She said haughtily, I'm bored at Shangqing sect. I've decided to leave and steal, find some opportunities to raise my cultivation. I'm so glad Master can accompany us. Bailey Qingmiao said, throwing her arms around Qingxiu. She felt her sleeves. Master, what happened to your body? Zhongli Qian. Hall Master Qiu truly was exceptional. Thus, the three traveled the world together for 30 years. Zhongli Qian rose to Mahayana, while Bailey Qingmiao came across many opportunities and managed to rise to body unity, entering the top ranks of the cultivation world. The comment section wasn't altogether pleased at this development. Ah, come on, if Bailey Qingmiao and Zhongli Qian want to travel the world, what does that have to do with you, immortal Qingxiu? Ah, come on, if Bailey Qingmiao wants to travel the world with her master Qingxiu, what does that have to do with you, Zhongli Qian? It was all this type of complaint. After glancing through the comments, Wenren he closed the book. He created a new illusory arm from blood mist, opened the array and left the room. Yin Hanjiang had already exited seclusion and was waiting outside. Seeing Wenren he came out, he immediately went forward to pay respects to him. His Venerable One swept an odd, hungry look over him, then looked away quickly. Top level of void boundary, on the threshold of Mahayana, he said lightly. Sect leader Yin has shown incredible progress in just 30 years. It's thanks to the spirit gathering array that the Venerable One said, Yin Hanjiang said. Since you are a high-level cultivator in your own right, "This venerable one is assigning you a task," said Wenren with a hand on his sleeve. "There is a traitor in Xianyuan sect, who will join forces with He Wenzhou in the future and fight against us. His name is Sengenki. I'm uncertain whether or not he has already joined the sect at this point, or whether or not he has changed his name. Find this man for me." Yin Hanjiang stared for a moment. He wasn't surprised that there was a traitor in the sect. Strictly speaking, Xianyuan sect was all traitors except for Yin Hanjiang. If Wenren showed the slightest weakness, anyone would turn against him. Wenren didn't mind disloyalty in his subordinates. He had said before that he only minded incompetence. 30 years ago, Wenren had never brought up looking for a traitor, whether during the Great Sect War or while sorting out the sect afterwards. How come after 30 years later, he suddenly cared about insubordination within his own ranks? Yin Hanjiang looked up doubtfully but saw that Wenren wasn't looking at him. He couldn't meet his Venerable One's warm gaze. End chapter. Devil Venerable also wants to know. Chapter 38, Crane-Haired Scholar. Wenren had sealed his sense of smell and did his best to not look at Yin Hanjiang. In the last 30 years, he had not only failed to find a method to restore his body, but his desire for blood had also grown over time. While he was cultivating, he had awakened to how to use the blood art on his own. One just needed to use the blood mist that composed their body to envelop the target and dissolve them, then direct the blood to flow into the patterns engraved on one's soul. After circulating it through the body 36 times, the victim would be completely absorbed without a trace, with the entirety of their spiritual essence preserved. A Mahayana cultivator, even if they had unparalleled aptitudes and boundless opportunities, would have taken at least a century to cultivate to that stage. Yet a blood cultivator could gain that power in just 3 days. If someone practiced the blood art from foundation establishment and managed to consume enough cultivators, then before the year was out, they could reach a great golden immortal level. In a decade, they could surpass the immortal realm and ascend to godhood. Wenren had said before that the demon in demonic path was distinct from true demons. What was a true demon? If there was a single true demon in a world, then all life within it would go extinct and the land would become barren. That's a true demon. In the myriad ways of cultivation, countless worlds had developed countless demons. During primordial times, the gods worked together to seal 180,000 demonic gods. After sustaining losses that more than halved their numbers, they sealed them within the demonic realm and only connected to other worlds via the Sea of Blood. Of those who entered the Sea of Blood, none was heard to have returned. Following Wenren's command, Yin Hanjiang left to verify Xianyuan sect's roster with Hall Master Yuan. Wenren and Yin Hanjiang usually didn't pay attention to these unimportant matters and left the management of the personnel to the rather shrewd Hall Master Yuan. Yin Hanjiang would need his help to find Sengenki. After he left, Wenren slowly turned around. In these 30 years, he had hoped that Yin Hanjiang would reach Mahayana stage and let go of his attachments to the self and others, so he wouldn't lose his mind if Wenren died. That way, Wenren could enter the Sea of Blood without concern. In the first volume of The God of Destruction, Volume 1, He Wenzhou plotted with the Blood Demon Elder and Sengenki. Together, they lured Wenren to the Sea of Blood with the news that Bailey Qingmiao was in danger, and after a round of fighting, they managed to knock him into the Sea of Blood. It seemed some things were predestined. Wenren was meant to enter the Sea of Blood, and the Sea of Blood was meant to be his grave. He had avoided his destiny to be saved by Bailey Qingmiao in the Great Sect War, and Bailey Qingmiao had let go of He Wenzhou with the help of Zhongli Qian. Wenren thought that after he had accomplished so much, fate would have been diverted a little. But he had made no progress in 30 years. It seemed he had no choice but to enter the Sea of Blood. Then was Yin Hanjiang's madness predetermined, too? No, it couldn't be. Wenren looked down at his remaining hand and clenched his fist. Polis would not fall and Alcade would not go mad. He would only allow Alcade to fall with him. He had already told Yin Hanjiang that he could accompany him after he died. He had already prepared for the worst. Now he just needed to resolve some other problems before he left for the Sea of Blood. When he obtained the God of Destruction, Volume 1, 30 years ago, he hadn't paid much mind to the demonic sect traitor, Sengenki. He couldn't remember this name no matter how much he thought. Xianyuan sect was big, with each of the hall masters and protectors managing their own territory. Wenren he didn't even know Shu Yanyan had a subordinate named Helian, so how would he remember a Sengenki? He had sent Yin Hanjiang to search so he would be relatively nearby while not being by Wenren he's side. That way, he could resist the blood arts temptation while at the same time, making sure that Yin Hanjiang didn't feel abandoned. Wenren he didn't mind his subordinates being disloyal. Members of Xianyuan sect who didn't want to become the devil Venerable themselves weren't worth much. But Sengenki had committed 3 unforgivable acts in the original story. First, he had helped He Wenzhou kill Shu Yanyan. He Wenzhou hated Shu Yanyan and joining forces with the perfectly average-looking Sengenki, set a trap to do away with her. Second, he helped He Wenzhou eliminate opposition within the righteous sects and put all the blame on Wenren He. Third, he killed Wenren He with He Wenzhou. After Wenren He's death, Sengenki took control of Xianyuan sect, while Bailey Qingmiao and He Wenzhou ascended together. Who knew if the second volume would touch on the Xianyuan sect again, or how many of the protectors and hall masters had ended up surviving. Even if Wenren He had to go to the Sea of Blood, he would enter it on his own terms and not because he was pushed in by a backstabber. The one in Xianyuan sect most suited to find Sengenki without leaking information was Yin Hanjiang. Yin Hanjiang visited Hall Master Yuan and obtained several ledgers of names from him. They were very thorough, even listing people who had already died when the old sect master was in power. Hall Master Yuan had also painstakingly recorded when they entered Xianyuan sect, who recruited them, and any changes in position in the intervening time. This old man entered Xianyuan sect 300 years ago and became the main hall master 200 years ago. The records since then are all complete. However, from 200 to 300 years ago, everything was recorded from memory so they can't exactly be considered complete. Further back than 300 years, there's nothing. Hall Master Yuan might have referred to himself as an old man, but in actuality he wasn't that old, just plump. He looked like a typical middle-aged man. Yin Hanjiang carefully looked over the names and found no Sengenki. He returned the records from 200 years ago to Altar Master Yuan and kept the incomplete register from 300 years ago. He planned to check every name who had entered Xianyuan sect 300 years ago and who was still alive. What does the Venerable One need the register for? Can this old man lend a hand? Hall Master Yuan said with a fawning smile. No need, said Yin Hanjiang, rolling up the list. He had not, at any point, mentioned Sengenki. If he was a traitor and had changed his name, then he would increase his vigilance if he heard it. Yin Hanjiang first eliminated all the nascent soul and below names from the list. If one's level was too low, one wouldn't even have the chance to backstab in Xianyuan sect. Those who were still alive after more than 200 years only consisted of the hall masters, the sect protectors, and some of their most trusted subordinates. Chiu Kongxiu had been a ghost cultivator of the Hellfire Pavilion 300 years ago. She didn't have brains and couldn't be much of a traitor, so she could be crossed off the list. Shu Yanyan had joined 150 years ago. Having been close to the old sect master, she was immediately made right protector, so she could be crossed off, too. Though, she had a subordinate called Helian Yi who had remained at body unity stage for many years. He had joined Xianyuan sect 300 years ago and his record wasn't very detailed. It was a bit odd that he had been content to be Shu Yanyan's boy toy all this time. The final candidates were Helian Yi and Hall Master Miao, Hall Master Ruan and Hall Master Yuan. Each and every one of them were not convenient to investigate. Yin Hanjiang returned to Wenren and reported his findings. Wenren was seated, reading the abusive love affair, in one hand while nodding slightly in approval. Senjenki had made his debut 100 years into the story, so it was possible he was yet to join. But these 4 suspects Yin Hanjiang had found couldn't be overlooked either. They needed to be quietly monitored. Aside from the issue with the traitor, Wenren also paid attention to Bailey Qingmiao's side of things. Bailey Qingmiao, immortal Qingxiu, and Zhongli Jian had wandered together for 30 years. From the book's description, Qiu Kongxiu had dropped her cover multiple times. She only remained unnoticed because Zhongli Jian was covering for her and Bailey Qingmiao was gullible. The plot had no major changes in 30 years, with the author only writing several chapters of slice of life. Even when he was just reading, Wenren broke into a sweat on Qiu Kongxiu's antics. Good thing that Zhongli Jian was right there with her. It seemed that his hair had turned white overnight 22 years ago. With white hair and a young appearance, he appeared even more like an immortal now. Why did his hair turn white? The reason had to do with the young, innocent, playful, and good-natured 18-years-old new disciple that Bailey Qingmiao had taken in. Bailey Qingmiao also had a fate with this disciple. 18 years ago, she had passed by a village haunted by ghosts on her first outing from Shangqing sect. She had helped exorcise the ghosts and thus delayed her arrival to the 1,000-mile ice plains for a few days, making Wenren and Yin Hanjiang wait for her. 18 years later, Bailey Qingmiao coincidentally returned to the village and found a youth with a passion for practicing martial arts, who had managed to make it to Qi refining stage without being taught. He was just a step away from foundation establishment. Bailey Qingmiao, who had reached deity transformation by then, decided to take him as a disciple upon seeing such incredible aptitude. While Zhongli Jian was busy helping immortal Qingxiu escape the righteous cultivators that had been chasing them down all this time, she helped the boy establish his foundation, and by the time Zhongli Jian returned, the boy had already kowtowed to her as his shifu. Bailey Qingmiao dragged him over to introduce him to Zhongli Jian and immortal Qingxiu. With his spiritual cognition, Zhongli Jian could see that the boy was cheerful to Bailey Qingmiao's face, but behind her back, his expression turned dark and his eyes vicious. When immortal Qingxiu loudly praised the boy for being nice and obedient, she immediately got along with him while Zhongli Jian started getting a headache. Bailey Qingmiao had said with a smile, "Zhongli Xiang, Suhui was born the day I exorcised ghosts here. Could it be that destiny is connecting us?" Zhongli Jian instantly had misgivings and wanted to prevent her from accepting the boy, but he couldn't go against immortal Qingxiu. He only sat meditating for a night, and the next day, the sun shone on his white hair. Bailey Qingmiao. Zhongli Xiang, was it because last night I was anxious about not being able to teach a disciple properly and stayed up the whole night? Did I make your hair turn white? Zhongli Jian slowly shook his head. After Bailey Qingmiao had taken her disciple, she was only happily looking forward to their time together. She had stayed up worrying a whole night, and Zhongli Jian had stayed up as well, looking up at the stars and thinking that he'd never be able to correct Bailey Qingmiao's ways. Bailey Qingmiao was only anxious because he was anxious. Cultivators can change their own bodies after reaching nascent soul, Zhongli Jian said. Even if I was worried, my hair wouldn't turn white from it. He tied up his hair, fixing up his appearance. The meaning of his words being that it was him who made his hair white himself and wasn't planning to restore it for now. Bailey Qingmiao didn't get it, and neither did the readers of Abusive Love Affair. This journey has been wild. 3 people only have 3 eyes between them, so that's at least 1 for each. But how come they collectively only have 1 brain? Isn't Zhongli Jian overworking himself by carrying the whole team? Man, I was mistaken. I thought Qingxiu was a good counterpart for the idiot protagonist with how domineering she was, but I didn't know she'd take it this far. If they didn't have Zhongli Jian with them, nothing would be standing in these two's wake. The only thing keeping Qingxiu from murdering everyone they meet, or the 2 from being murdered, is Zhongli Jian. The more I read, the more I feel like something's wrong with Qing. When the Nangguo clan sent out invitations to their newborn's celebration, she toppled the ghost-suppressing steel in their back courtyard, exposing how the Nangguo clan extracted the spiritual roots of their illegitimate and branch children in order to give birth to an heir with a pure spiritual root, and letting loose a bunch of resentful child ghosts. Isn't that a good thing? Immortal Qing is such a charitable wandering immortal. The problem is that she didn't denounce the Nangguo clan alongside the righteous cultivators, but instead grabbed the clan head full of enthusiasm and asked how they raised such splendid resentful ghosts, and also whether or not he could give them to her. If Zhongli hadn't explained that she was joking, the righteous cultivators would have exorcised her along with the ghosts. After hearing about the evil technique, she also looked at Bailey Qingmiao with her eyes shining. That gave me chills at the moment. I was scared Bailey Qingmiao would wake up one day with her spiritual root stolen. I don't believe it. Immortal Qing takes care of Bailey Qingmiao the best. She had to have been trying to save those suffering children. Are you as brain dead as Bailey Qingmiao? Even Zhongli Qian can see the problems with Qing and he's blindfolded. Can Bailey Qingmiao donate her eye to him? Let my Qian see the light again. I don't care about Zhongli Qian and Qing fighting over Bailey Qingmiao. There's just one thing that's been bothering me. Author, look up at your own title. Abusive love affair, you are the only one that will remain in my heart. How does the story fit this title anymore? It's a good thing that it doesn't fit the title. Yeah, it's a good thing. Bailey Qingmiao might have been mystified as to why Zhongli Qian's hair turned white, but Wenren he knew. He had used a technique for suppressing ghosts' wordless child. This could only be learned by the four great clans who studied Confucianism deeply. Those who used it would experience the vicissitudes of human society in a single night, their hair turning white as a result. After completing the technique, ghost cultivators would be scared to approach and would be suppressed by great virtues. And indeed, after Zhongli Qian's hair went white, Qing and Suhui settled down a lot. Qiu Kongxiu at least, was a flexible person who had learned from Zhongli Qian to think before she acted and now discussed things first with Zhongli Qian when anything came up. They wouldn't end up being pursued by dozens of righteous cultivators anymore. After completing the wordless child technique, Zhongli Qian decided to spread philosophy in his wanderings, teaching countryside children how to read and write. The three of separate generations of Qing, Bailey Qingmiao and Suhui also quietly obeyed him and helped him run his schools. After 20 years, Zhongli Qian awakened to his own Dao, the path of sharing knowledge to other people. He had managed to completely break free of the Zhongli clan's fetters and ascended to Mahayana with his own power. At Mahayana, he could easily will his hair to turn back to black, but Zhongli Qian felt that he looked more like a teacher this way, so he kept his hair the way it was. He took the name Crane-Haired Scholar, leaving his legacy in the cultivation world. Over 30 years, the three had each made progress in their own way. Even Bailey Qingmiao managed to become calmer after years of teaching. At last, the author seemed to remember that her novel was called Abusive Love Affair, and Bailey Qingmiao received a message from her sect. Elder Qingrong told her that the sect master, who had lain unconscious for many years, now only needed an elixir made of the Lockhart herb to be cured. Shangqing sect had learned that the Xiling Pavilion, which had secluded itself from the world for many years, was in possession of this herb. He Wenzhao had gone to ask for it and had been given a lot of trouble by the pavilion master. It was feared that he Wenzhao would be rejected, so if Bailey Qingmiao was willing, Elder Qingrong was hoping she could go and help him. Seeing the words he Wenzhao, Bailey Qingmiao felt a pang through her heart which had been at peace for so many years. Zhongli Qian sensed Bailey Qingmiao's pain and said calmly, "We can go together. You have to repay your masters and overcome your own trials. One can't avoid their problems forever. After all this traveling, you might as well see if your mental state has matured." Since Zhongli Qian was already seen as the leader of the group, they all set off for the Xiling Pavilion. The Xiling Pavilion lay in the far north on Taiyin Mountain, a neutral sect which hid itself from the world. They were a sect shrouded in mystery, who didn't even join the Great Sect War. The revision abruptly stopped here. Wenren he still remembered that wandering immortal of the Xiling Pavilion whom he had beaten up once, and her possession technique. Wandering immortals actually reach the same state as blood cultivators through different means. They discarded their flesh body for a purely spiritual existence and were not limited by the mortal world. Perhaps the possession technique of a wandering immortal could help him deal with the blood cultivator's desire for blood. Wenren he closed the book and decided that he should also set off for the Xiling Pavilion. End chapter. Devil Venerable also wants to know. Chapter 39, Emotion Extinguishing Rod. Wenren he couldn't leave Xianyuan sect without a word to anyone. Appropriately speaking, if the sect master wasn't around, the new deputy sect leader, Yin Hanjiang, who had been in his position for just 30 years, should handle his duties in his place. Wenren he was planning to leave Yin Hanjiang at Xianyuan sect and set off for the Xiling Pavilion alone. Xianyuan sect didn't have any important affairs that needed to be managed by him personally, and it hardly mattered if his subordinates rebelled after he left, since they would surrender when he returned anyway. Yin Hanjiang was always close to Wenren he, and his power was at the peak of void boundary. He never showed any wariness toward Wenren he. If Wenren he were to say to him, "This venerable one needs to consume souls," he was afraid that Yin Hanjiang might offer his own up in a heartbeat. It was too dangerous to travel together with him. He would be more at ease and could restrain himself better if he was alone. Thus, before departing, Wenren he called over Yin Hanjiang and told him he was heading to Taiyin Mountain. Yin Hanjiang completely failed to clue in onto the fact that Wenren he was trying to ditch him. He quietly followed behind, preparing to set off with Wenren he. Seeing his behavior, Wenren he stopped walking and carefully considered what he was about to say. He slowly opened his mouth. "Sect leader Yin, about the sect leadership while this venerable one is gone, and the search for the traitor." Yin Hanjiang's expression turned blank. He stared silently at Wenren he, making it seemed as if he stopped thinking for himself and simply awaiting his venerable one's next order. If Wenren he gave the command, Yin Hanjiang would carry it out to perfection, even if he was unwilling. Wenren he found that he couldn't continue. Yin Hanjiang maintained his attentive posture, waiting for his venerable one to finish his command. It can be left to Protector Shu. She had cultivated much anyways. Since the other hall masters were overcome by her before, they'll be more wary and less willing to disturb the peace this time. The matter of the traitor isn't urgent. We don't even have any clues at the moment, but it's possible that if we both leave, Senjenki will let something slip. Wenren he finally relayed this to the expressionless Yin Hanjiang. Yin Hanjiang's face finally gained some life. He dipped his head low and said, "This subordinate understands." Wenren he furrowed his brows. It wasn't like he and Yin Hanjiang had never left each other's sides before. The Devil Venerable came and went when he pleased, and he hardly needed to report it all to Yin Hanjiang. Yin Hanjiang had never asked, either. It was just that after reading Abusive Love Affair, Wenren he started worrying about Yin Hanjiang's psychological well-being and tried to avoid leaving him alone. Now, when he wanted to leave him, he felt some misgivings. This wasn't right. Originally, Wenren he was hoping that Yin Hanjiang's emotions would settle down so he wouldn't do anything unpleasant after Wenren he died, so he paid more attention to him. But now he felt less comfortable about leaving Yin Hanjiang alone. When Wenren he wanted to go somewhere, since when had he paid attention to how dejected Yin Hanjiang looked? And since when had it softened his heart? "Yin Hanjiang," Wenren he said, switching to using his name. "This venerable one is not a god. He is the same as you, just another cultivator journeying on the path to divinity." "This subordinate understands," Yin Hanjiang said, still bowing his head. "Admiration is all well and good, but you need to walk your own path. Do you understand this?" Wenren he took a step closer. He put a hand on the back of Yin Hanjiang's neck, his thumb by his ear, applying pressure and forcing him to raise his head. The distance tinged both their faces slightly red. Wenren he sensed the essence of a sword cultivator that surrounded Yin Hanjiang, which was top-quality spiritual essence to a blood cultivator. Wenren he had not been able to absorb spiritual energy for 30 years, and he felt dizzy. The pressure of his hand on Yin Hanjiang's neck strengthened, as the incantation for absorbing blood surfaced in his mind. With just slightly more force from his hand, he could dissolve Yin Hanjiang into blood, and his soul and all his spiritual essence would belong to Wenren he. Blood chi tinged Wenren he's face red, but for some reason, Yin Hanjiang was blushing, too. He struggled out of Wenren he's hold and spoke while cupping his hands, "This subordinate understands. This subordinate will put every effort toward ascending to Mahayana to be of help to the Venerable One." With Yin Hanjiang backing away, self-control returned to Wenren he. He suppressed his surging blood chi and turned away. "Message Xu Yanyan and tell her she will be in charge of the sect for the meanwhile." After Yin Hanjiang sent the message talisman, Wenren he didn't turn around and instead, departed in a streak of light. Yin Hanjiang frantically brought out his sword to chase after him. He gnawed on his lip. What did his Venerable One mean by those words? Did he notice Yin Hanjiang's feelings? While they were talking, had Yin Hanjiang let something show in his expression? Yin Hanjiang continually berated himself that in the future, he had to be more vigilant around his Venerable One. He was the deputy sect leader and ought to manage the Xianyuan sect in the sect master's absence. He should not be disheartened because he couldn't follow his Venerable One around. Even if he felt pained, he couldn't let any of it show. The two arrived at Taiyin Mountain, each dwelling on their own problems. Wenren he landed outside the pavilion's array and avoided the patrolling disciples. Then, he opened the book to check on how the events had developed. He would be deciding right now whether to barge directly into the Xiling Pavilion, or order their gates to open up for him. Bailey Qingmiao's group had arrived at Taiyin Mountain 3 days ago. Bailey Qingmiao had paced back and forth in front of their misty dawn bell, unsure of whether or not she should ring it. From what Elder Qingrong had said, the Xiling Pavilion had told He Wenzhao that since they only had one stalk of the Lockhart herb, it truly was difficult for them to give it to him. They could only let him have it if he could find a way to make a new stalk mature. The Lockhart herb sprouts needed the lava of Taiyin Mountain in order to grow, but the eruption should not be strong enough that it would destroy the Xiling Pavilion. He had to make the mountain erupt while keeping it in check. This was an unreasonable task. He Wenzhao's group had been staying at the Xiling Pavilion all this while, hanging around the crater and trying to come up with a way to make a volcano that had erupted only once in the last 3,000 years, to do so again. Over half a month had passed and they had made no progress. Elder Qingrong hadn't contacted Bailey Qingmiao for her to complete this impossible task. She had wanted Bailey Qingmiao to convince immortal Qingxiu and the crane-haired wanderer to act. Elder Qingxiu was an honorary elder of Shangqing sect and ought to help in sect business anyways. It was just that her personality was a bit problematic. It was said that the Nangguo clan was still after her life. Shangqing sect knew Elder Qingxiu favored Bailey Qingmiao, so they hoped Bailey Qingmiao could bring her around. Additionally, in these few years, the name of the crane-haired scholar had already become renowned across the cultivation world, which made the Zhongli clan full of regret for passing him up. The Shangqing sect knew that Bailey Qingmiao and the crane-haired wanderer had a heart-linking parasite, so Elder Qingrong thought could convince him as well. With the crane-haired wanderer's help, they were sure they could satisfy the Xiling Pavilion's demands. As for Suhui, he was just a core formation disciple. No one expected him to do anything, and Bailey Qingmiao just brought him along so he could go to new places and gain experience. The gloomy and brooding Suhui was actually the wildest one in the group. He had originally planned to kill Bailey Qingmiao in revenge for once having been exorcised by her. If it weren't for a stillborn infant who happened to be there, he would have nowhere to hide and would have been destroyed that day. So, he truly had it out for her. Therefore, when Bailey Qing Miao returned to the village and decided to take him as disciple, he instantly agreed. He planned to be a good and obedient disciple, to put Bailey Qing Miao on a pedestal and make her think of him as unfailingly loyal and considerate. That way, when he betrayed her later on, he would get to witness her expression twisted in shock and heartbreak. With these thoughts, Suhui accepted her as HS master, then felt a gaze on him that made his hair stand on end. He followed the gaze and found his nominal martial elder licking her lips while looking at him. He broke out in a cold sweat. That night, while Bailey Qing Miao was meditating, immortal Qingxiu kidnapped Suhui into her hut. Suhui was unable to resist the power of a wandering immortal, and it was impossible for him to break the barrier that she casually set up. Even if he screamed, no one outside would hear him. "Help!" the 18-year-old boy cried, pounding on the door, but the woman behind him heartlessly yanked him back. "Stop moving. Let me take a look at you," immortal Qingxiu said, her eyes gleaming. She held Suhui down against the ground and put a hand against his chest. Her eyes brightened. "A heartbeat. You're a living ghost cultivator." "You know that I'm a ghost cultivator," Suhui exclaimed. He thought his disguise was perfect. He had tricked Bailey Qing Miao but didn't expect immortal Qingxiu to see through him at a glance. "How did you manage to cultivate the hungry ghost path while retaining a mortal body?" Qingxiu fixed her eyes on Suhui's chest. "If I removed your heart, would you survive?" "I don't know," Suhui cried, crumbling under Qingxiu's predatory gaze. "When my spirit was about to dissipate, I sensed a stillborn infant was around. It was a rare kind of infant, where the soul that should have occupied it had left but it was still breathing. I possessed it, and that's how I became like this, a living person and a ghost cultivator at the same time." Suhui had reached Qi refining stage without any instruction because he ate the ghosts around the village. Only a ghost cultivator should be able to consume ghosts, but with Suhui's unique constitution, he could do it while still alive and increase his spiritual essence. Hearing his explanation, Qingxiu fell into deep thought and finally said, "It seems that the issue lies in this body of yours. If I devoured your soul and took your body, I could probably go back to being a ghost cultivator." She seemed like such an enlightened master. After thinking for a whole night, all she came up with was this. Was her head only for decoration? Suhui tried pitifully to escape. When immortal Qingxiu had him pinned down and was about to eat his soul, Bailey Qing Miao's voice came from outside the hut. "Master Qingxiu? Disciple Su? Where are you? The sun's up, so it's about time to head out." Probably inside that hut, came the warm voice of the blindfolded man. "It seems immortal Qingxiu is helping you discipline your new disciple." "Really? I'll go check." Bailey Qing Miao opened the door with a smile. In that moment, Qingxiu let go of Suhui and took down her array, so that Bailey Qing Miao instantly caught sight of them. "Shifu." For the first time, Suhui realized that Bailey Qing Miao was truly a kind and righteous person. He leapt at her and threw his arms around her waist, swearing to himself that he would treat Bailey Qing Miao good in the future and never leave his master's side. He had to make sure he was never alone with immortal Qingxiu. Elder Qingxiu must have felt this child was rebellious and took the opportunity to teach him to obey his masters. Zhongli Qian put weight into that last word, and Suhui and Qingxiu both shuddered. Qingxiu may have been stronger than Zhongli Qian, but every time she met his blindfolded gaze, she felt uneasy. Unlike Wenren-He's direct and oppressive manner, Zhongli Qian was gentle and never forced anyone, putting everyone around him at ease instead. Yet something about his perceptive gaze that seemed to see through everything made him intimidating. After that experience, Suhui discarded his grudge and dedicated himself to Bailey Qing Miao, treating her sincerely and with consideration. Seeing Bailey Qing Miao pace in front of the bell at this moment, Suhui squinted and said, "Shifu, are you nervous?" Bailey Qing Miao flushed. "It's not like I'll fall for Shikshan again." Qing is married to Lushija, and I couldn't come between them. I'm just worried that since we haven't seen each other in 30 years, my emotions will be stirred up and Zhongli Xiong will get affected. Su Huai was originally scared of King Xiu, but after Zhongli Qian learned the wordless child technique, Su Huai and King Xiu became close instead. Su Huai also learned that immortal King Xiu was once a ghost cultivator, and the master of the Hellfire Pavilion at Xianyuan sect. The Hellfire Pavilion. A small-time ghost cultivator like him didn't have a hope of getting close to a place like that. From then on, Su Huai had started studying under King Xiu. Gradually, his actions became influenced by Qiu Kong Xiu. Don't worry, Shifu. If you become muddle-headed again, I'll knock you out and drag you away. Senior Zhongli won't be affected at all, Su Huai said. Then, he rang the Misty Dawn bell on behalf of Bailey Qingmiao. Bailey Qingmiao. Were they kin of different generations? Her disciple was becoming more and more like Elder King Xiu. After the sounding of the bell, Bailey Qingmiao showed the Xiling Pavilion's disciples a visitation slip that could only be created by the Shangqing sect to verify her identity, and they invited her group in to meet He Wenzhao. There was no sign of the pavilion master. He Wenzhao had come with Lu Xinyi and a few other disciples he was friends with. Upon seeing his little Shimei for the first time in 30 years, he stopped dead in his tracks. He gazed at her from afar, unable to look away, not even feeling that Lu Xinyi was tugging at his arms. Bailey Qingmiao was the same. Over these past years, she had undergone 2 heavenly tribulations, for the deity transformation and body unity stages, and each time she had wanted to let go of her resolve and return to her Shixing's side. She would be happy just looking at him from a distance. If it weren't for Zhongli Qian, who was aware of Bailey Qingmiao's emotions at all times and could quickly help her reconsider, and the much more powerful immortal King Xiu keeping an eye on her, Bailey Qingmiao would have already snuck off. Now that she was looking at He Wenzhao, Zhongli Qian could feel his heart pounding wildly. Even though he couldn't see, he could sense how distinguished and tender that distant silhouette was. The built-up emotions of 30 years were too intense, and for a moment, Zhongli Qian was unable to suppress Bailey Qingmiao's feelings. Fortunately, Bailey Qingmiao had only taken half a step forward when she felt a cold gust at her back. She pulled her head out of the way and, looking back, saw that Su Huai was swinging his bonded weapon at her, the emotion-extinguishing rod. The emotion-extinguishing rod was 40 meters long and as thick as Bailey Qingmiao's waist. Zhongli Qian and Qiu Kongxiu's help had been needed to refine it. It was capable of changing its size in accordance to the of will its wielder. Su Huai had made it the maximum size, and though Bailey Qingmiao managed to avoid it, He Wenzhao, who was standing in a daze 39 meters away, took a blow right to the head. Even if he was a void boundary cultivator, he would feel a metal stick with the thickness of a human's waist hitting him in the skull. Su Huai, having missed Bailey Qingmiao, spun the rod in his hand and transformed it into 2 thin sticks and was about to whack her again. Bailey Qingmiao was already calm with the help of Zhongli Qian, and quickly reached out to stop her disciple's weapon. "Disciple Su, stop swinging that thing." "I'm fine." Zhongli Qian showed a faint smile. Su Huai sure has immortal King Xiu to thank for his magic weapon. It was forged with the resentment of thousands of vengeful spirits before they were exorcised, all female ghosts who had been abandoned or harmed by men. It may not be a near-immortal artifact, but it has unique powers. If a woman is hit by it, her love will turn to hate. The more she loves someone, the more she'll want to kill him. If a man were to be hit by it, his body would be invaded with yin energy, and he will lose capabilities in a certain area. It wasn't really convenient for Zhongli Qian to explain further, so Qiu Kongxiu gleefully continued for him. She was quite proud of what she'd made for her little disciple. After all, He Wenzhao had been hit in the head, yet he felt the agony in some other part of his body. He couldn't check it in front of a group disciples, so he could only grit his teeth and say, "Shimei, who is that child behind you? Why is he trying to hit you?" End chapter.